bollocks.
Okay guys, welcome to part 2 of a sort of a new series that I'm doing. What I'm basically doing is looking at some of the real early video games in the arcade, and sort of taking a look at some of the versions that appeared on the Commodore 64. Now before you start posting and saying what about this game, what about that game, I've just tried to look at the real early games. I'm talking about games that came out in 1980, 81, even before that. I'm not interested in stuff that came out in 1986, whatever. So this first one, Elevator Action. Never actually played it in the arcades, I must admit. I mean, the first time I got to know about a lot of these games is when I played the C64 version. Not a big fan of this game, I must admit. Right, this is the C64 version. Now you can probably tell the graphics are pretty rubbish looking in comparison. I'm not quite sure what's going on with the main sprite. It's also got a really small screen. Not quite sure why that is. Not quite sure why you've got the doors flashing. I thought that meant that there was going to be somebody coming out the doors, but I don't think that's the case. Now, I think the idea of this game is to get to the bottom. You can see there I'm on floor 20 at the moment, so I need to take the stairs. Now there was a version of this that I used to play back in the day, and you know what, I could not find it. I don't think it wasn't called Elevator Action, it was called something else completely different. I'm sure it might have even came on the Soft Aid compilation that came out as part of the sort of the Live Aid, Band Aid charity thing. Is it Gumshoe? It might have been Gumshoe actually, now that I think about it. I don't know why I couldn't think of the name earlier on. But this is alright, I suppose. Like I says, I'm not a big fan of the arcade one. Yeah, that is Elevator Action. Let's crack on. Right, this game needs absolute no introduction. It's Mighty Frogger. Every time I say I'm not going to introduce a game, I always tell you the name anyway, just in case there's one person out there that doesn't know what this game is. Now, this game was probably one of the most popular games to be ported to the sort of, you know, the original micros. There was, when I was going through the versions on the C64, there must have been about a dozen different versions. Now there's two I used to play back in the day, but I discovered the one I'm going to show you was actually an official conversion, so I thought, take a look at that one. This is kind of similar to Berserk as far as it looks simple, but it gets difficult very quickly. So yeah, this one here it's an official port of the Sega game. This is Frogger, and it was ported by Sierra. Now, oddly, I couldn't get the joystick to work, so I'm using keys here. But this actually played really well. Now, quite a few people have commented in the past as why does a frog drown in Frogger, considering frogs actually live in the water. So we've obviously got the only amphibian that isn't actually able to swim. Got a wee healthy bonus here for eating a moth or whatever it is. Butterfly, not quite sure. Dragonfly possibly, I think it's a dragonfly actually. There's another one up there. Let's try and move across. There we go. Now we're being treated to Yankee Doodle Dandy music. Oops. That's one thing I loved about all the original conversions on the 8-bit machines, is they all featured classic music. Purely and simply because there was no such thing as you know, trademark or anything to pay, so you could go ahead and publish it without worrying about anyone going to sue. Now as I'm making this video, I've got one eye on the screen and I've got one eye on the floor. I'm downstairs in the living room, and the reason I'm looking at the floor is because when I was watching Robot Wars last night, this almighty massive, and I mean massive, spider bolted across the floor and ran underneath the TV unit. And I had a look for it and I couldn't find it, so it's obviously in the house somewhere. It's probably making its way up and under my pillow as I speak. But yeah, there was tons and tons of Frogger games. The very first game I ever owned, well, it was actually Crazy Combat Interceptor Software. Another game was Frogger 64 by Interceptor. It's actually not a bad version. My favourite version, which I played, was called Jumping Jack. It was by Livewire, but I said I've featured this game because this is the official port. That's actually really, really good. Right, the mighty Galaga. Funny thing is, considering I love shoot 'em ups, especially vertical shoot 'em ups, I'm not a big fan of Galaga. I don't know what it is. I can't quite put my finger on why I don't like this game so much. Now, I couldn't find any official conversion of this game anywhere for the C64. So what I have featured is the only version that I could find, which I used to play back in the day, which will come in very shortly. Yeah, I don't know what it is about this game. No idea, I can't quite, I mean, it ticks all the boxes. It's fast paced, you've got this sort of, like, you can double up your ship. I don't know, no idea why I don't like it. I wouldn't say I don't like it, but it's not a game I would ever really choose to play. And yet I love Galaxian, I love all these games, but oddly I'm not a fan of Galaga, don't know why. But this is a classic nevertheless. This was the sequel to Galaxian. Featured better graphics, obviously you've got the power up thing. If you get caught in the tractor beam, your ship gets captured, then if you shoot down the ship as it's dive bombing you, you then get your ship back. Now this is the only version of Galaga, or the similar version, that I could actually find. This is Galaxy, and this was released by Kingsoft. Now I played this a lot back in the day, loved it to bits. Now the funny thing was, when I was recording it for this video, you'll see it very shortly, it actually suffers from slowdown. It actually looks more like a Spectrum game, oddly. But yeah, as the big kind of spaceships start to swoop about, you'll see it slows up quite a lot. Now I'm wondering, is it because obviously the C64 could produce, was it 8 sprites on screen at any one time? Now if you move underneath the tractor beam, like in real Galaga, your ship gets captured. Yeah, I'm wondering, is it because the C64 can only produce 8 sprites, and given that there's all these enemies on screen at any one time, I'm wondering if it's because they're not sprite based and that's why it's slowing up. Not quite sure. Maybe one of you technical bods can tell me. Maybe it's just badly programmed, I'm not too sure. I'm certainly not aware of it being in basic. But I love this game to bits. I played it a lot back in the day. It was quite easy as well, which was always a big plus for me. But like I said, I couldn't find an official conversion in Galaga. I couldn't even find any C64 version called Galaga, because back then you could basically rip off any game you wanted. Yeah, it's even got the bonus stage after once you clear 2 waves you get a bonus stage, so this is really, for all intents and purposes, this is Galaga. My goodness, that little sound effect there, calculating the bonus score, that just takes me right back. Yeah, that's Galaxy. Right, now we come to one of my favourite shooters. The mighty Galaxian. This is a fantastic game. This game evokes so many fond memories for me. It's just an awesome game, it really is. It's got bright, the graphics seem extra bright, and you had that absolutely beautiful sort of blinking star field in the background. And that noise, the sort of throbbing noise in the background, that is just a iconic sound. Whenever you walked into an arcade, you could always hear that noise, and you could hear the noise it getting played. This was one of these games that was just absolutely fiendishly difficult. You know, I mean, when I played it back in the day, I was lucky if I lasted. If I cleared one wave, I was probably doing really well. I mean, I probably never actually managed to clear a wave now I think about it. It was just absolutely savagely hard. Fortunately, I'm slightly better at it now, having the ability to, you know, play it in MAME. Now, this was the version of Galaxian that I played back in the day. This was by a company called Solar Software, and it was rather shamelessly called, I think they called it Galaxians with an S, whereas the arcade one was Galaxian. Now, the thing about this game is there was no animation to speak of. The graphics were huge, as you can see there. There's also no blinking star field. I mean, I remember thinking this was quite a good version back then, but looking at it now, it's pretty abysmal. Yeah, the graphics are massive looking. But I've got to say, I did play this game quite a lot. Yeah, it's not the greatest, is it? If I remember, it gets hard really quickly as well. Yeah, that was Galaxians, and that was by Solar Software. Now this one here, this is by Atari. I'm assuming this is the official version of Galaxian. Now, this is the very first time I've actually played this. Now, interestingly, one thing, the overriding thing you notice about this game is it plays very slow. Now the graphics are quite authentic looking to the arcade. If you look at them, the movement, it's just very slow. The one thing this doesn't have is a blinking star field, but I'm guessing probably the C64 was struggling to actually move the sprites, never mind having to worry about, you know, a star field thing. But this one's probably way more authentic than that last effort we looked at. At least it's they've tried to actually kind of stay faithful to the graphics as well. So yep, it's interesting that this game plays very slow, so I'm guessing it must just be something to do with the C64's not physically able to have as many sort of moving objects on the screen at once without it kind of slowing to a snail's pace. But apart from the speed, it's pretty good, and I think if I had this back in the day, this would have been my Galaxian of choice. I think this might have actually been released in cartridge, which was probably why I never actually had the game, or indeed I never even knew it existed until I came to make this video. Yeah, you can see it speeds up a wee bit once there's only one graphic to move. Yeah, that's pretty good. That is Galaxian by Atari. The Mighty Gorf. One of the first games to have speech. Now, what was interesting about this game is it basically ripped off every other computer game under the sun. I mean, this is obviously based on Space Invaders. The funny thing is, it ripped off every sort of genre under the sun, but it didn't actually do any of them particularly well. So you've got Space Invaders, and you've got this one, which is slightly unusual. The speech in this is awesome. It's got one of the most unfrightening baddies ever. It looks like a little glove puppet, a little pink thing with a face. Come on. Oh, there he's moving now. Yep, now we get a really poor version of Galaxian. I mean, the movement is diabolical. I remember playing this on MAME thinking, this is absolutely awful. Then I actually played a real arcade version of this, and it was just as bad. So the arcade version of this isn't particularly good, but it's always going to be classed as an iconic game because of speech, and it featured all these other games. I think it was probably the first game to feature a sort of an end of level kind of ship. Yeah, there is the wee glove puppet thing. Right, this is the C64 one. This was released by Commodore. There is the wee pink thing. Oops, get that cursor off the screen. Now I've got to say, this version actually isn't half bad, all things considered. I think that was the thing, I played this a lot back in the day, and then when I went to play the main version, it almost felt like this was a better version because, you know, the graphics don't flicker, whereas on the arcade one they flicker terribly. So this is actually quite a good version of Gorf. Obviously the sprites are a lot bigger than they are in the arcade, but everything nips along nice and quick. It's also a bit easier than the arcade one as well. Especially if you get right in the centre and you just blast. Get that fire button going. Like so. Now, I didn't remember that. Right, interestingly, this version doesn't actually have the Galaxian level. So I've lost a level. Ah, damn it. It just jumps straight to the sort of mothership. What you need to try and do is penetrate that wee red core. One more shot right in it should do it. There we go. And it should then go back to the first level again. It should be slightly more difficult. Yeah, I think if this game was made now, you wouldn't get away with just ripping off every other game under the sun. I'm actually surprised they got away with it. Ah, bollocks. Yeah, but it certainly plays like the arcade one. It's a really good conversion, this. Oh, I've got two little glove puppets for company. Right, that is a Gorf. That's not a bad version at all. Right, Gyrus. This is a great game. and it's a game I sadly don't play all that often, and I really need to amend that. Now I'm not sure how this played in arcades. I'm guessing it probably utilised a spinner, which would be the right sort of control system for it. Using the joystick it was just left and right. What you want to do is shoot the little planet thing in the centre, which then gives you 2 bullets instead of 1, which makes things considerably easier. Now once you've cleared the level, you then warp, and you've got, there you go, 1 warp to Neptune. Now this is a game that Dominic Diamond would have loved to have featured in Games Master for reasons which will become clear just in a few seconds. Great music as well. Right, here we go. Ah, damn it. Right, okay, I thought I'd actually played a bit more. Right, well, you can probably see what's coming, hopefully. Right, this is the C64 one released by Parker Brothers. Now, I played this a lot back in the day. Now, I've got to say, I didn't realise it flickered quite so much. But this is a great version. Apart from the flickering sprites, like I said, which I never really noticed when I played it back then, but the thing is, when you actually play the game, you really don't, it's not that noticeable. But it plays, feels and sounds just like the arcade one. It's an excellent conversion. And it's even got the wee kind of scrolling, or not scrolling star field, it's even got the sort of stars coming zooming towards you to give a quite a good kind of spacey theme, or spacey experience, if you know what I mean. Right, here we go. And here's the line that Mr. Oh, I'll get it yet. Yeah, you get a wee kind of bonus stage. I think this game was released on cartridge actually in the C64. And I'm wondering if the reason the sprites are flickering is because it's trying to sort of move quite a lot on the screen, possibly. Who knows? If you know, please put a comment below. Right, finally, this would go down a treat in Games Master, because the next planet we're going to is Uranus. Yep, it's 3 warps to Uranus, and I instantly die. Now, if you're very careful, you can actually, I think you can actually destroy the little enemies, even though they're kind of clustered in the centre of the screen there. You can sometimes pick out 1 or 2. There you go, I think I'm shooting a couple of them, possibly. You really want to get the double firepower thing. The music really adds a lot to this game though. Obviously we're hoping for the stage 3 when it says that you're about to enter Uranus, but anyway, let's move on swiftly. That is Gyrus. Right, Hunchback, yep. Now this was actually one of the first official arcade conversions that I can remember. Certainly the C64 version of this was one of the first games I actually had for the C64. I'm sure this game is actually written by a British company. Can't remember exactly who it was. The idea being you play Quasimodo and you've got to try and rescue Esmeralda. Each level gets slightly more difficult. Now if you hang around too long you'll see there's a little soldier climbing up the wall with a large spiky sword. That sounded straight out of Qbert. Didn't actually know if the arcade version of this had speech. And I think this was the very first arcade conversion that Ocean ever ported. I think this came out before Mr. Wimpy, which was based on Burger Time. Right, anyway, this is the arcade one. Whoops. There we go, let's take a look at the C64 one. Hunchback by J. Steele. My goodness, it's amazing just what a little bit of music, the memories it can evoke. I played this a lot when I first got my C64. I actually loved this game. Never ever completed it. Apart from the crap scrolling, it's actually a really good conversion. In fact, I'd probably go as far as to say it actually plays better than the arcade one. It's got a lovely satisfying bell noise as well, I always thought. As far as bell noises go, at least. You can probably tell what's happening here. You've just got different levels, but they add in, you know, extra difficulty. So you'll get the spikes, then you'll get the spikes with arrows and so on, then you'll get the spikes with arrows and fireballs as well at the same time. So the first probably half a dozen levels are pretty easy. Oops, a daisy. So a wee bit more careful timing's required. Now there's no timeline, there's no sort of time scale thing on this. It's just you've got the wee guy that kind of climbs a wall and he'll eventually start walking towards you with his sword, so that's the only sort of, oops, felt that one. So it's a game you need to learn. I mean, there's no way you're going to anticipate that happening, but once you, obviously the more you play it you get to know what's going to happen, so you need to jump right away there. Jump! It's a very simple game, but it's actually quite good fun. Well, so far Mr. Spider hasn't reared his ugly head yet. I guess he's probably making his way upstairs to bed. He's going to be underneath my pillow. Either that or he's one of the 14 spiders apparently everybody swallows once a year when you're sleeping. So you never know. Anyway, spiders actually keep the fly population down, so I don't actually mind them. Unless they're under your pillow. But, Getting a bit more tricky now. Right, anyway, that's Hunchback and that is by Ocean. That's an excellent conversion. Right, now, as anyone that watches my channel may know, I'm a massive fan of Defender, Robotron, classic games. Now this is another Williams game, Joust, which I'm not a fan of at all. It's a very, very unique game. I mean, you've got to basically, the idea is you've got to tackle these enemies, but the only way you can actually defeat them is by being slightly higher up the screen than them when you actually make contact. If you collide with them like so, and they're above you, then you lose a life. And the interesting game mechanic of this is you've got to flap your wings. Now you do that by pressing the flap button. Now in the arcade there was a flap button. You've got your joystick plus your flap button. So this is the C64 version. Now this was the exact version that I played a lot back in the day. Now once you knock a soldier off his, what is it, an emu? I'm not quite sure what it is. An ostrich? It's an ostrich, I think it is. Once you, which is interesting because ostriches actually can't fly, but they can in this game. Once you knock a pilot or a rider off his ostrich, you can pick up the egg for points. Now if you leave the egg, it then hatches back into a baddie again, so you want to knock them off and then collect the egg before it respawns. Now if you wait too long, you then get, oops, bollocks, you'll see there it's now respawned into something even quicker. Damn it. Yep, you get a wee pterodactyl. If you hang about too long, he appears on the screen. You can't kill him at all, you've got to avoid him. Right, come on. Now, move. Now this game was actually, there was a guy who was going to write this for the Vectrex, and he never actually got around to releasing it, but one of my mates actually bought the only cartridge known that's got the code for this game in it. One of my mates bought it. I think it's worth a few quid now, right enough. So yeah, not a big fan of Joust. Although it's certainly regarded as a cult classic. It's definitely up there as one of the classic early video games. Just not my cup of tea. Yep, so anyway, that is Joust, and that's on the C64. I've got to say, it's a pretty authentic conversion. Right, let's batter on. Right then, Juneau first. This is an awesome game. Now, this was a game that I didn't even know existed. Well, it's like a lot of arcade games. I'd never even heard of this game. I used to play the C64 version, and then it was only once I got MAME I realised there was actually an arcade version of it, and obviously this is the arcade one, and it's just sublime. It's a fantastic shooter. If I didn't know different, I would say that this was a Williams game. You know, it's got the Eugene Jarvis sound effects. It's got the bright visuals, you know, the pyrotechnics, the glowing graphics, but the sound is awesome. I wouldn't have been the slightest bit surprised if I thought that Eugene Jarvis actually had a hand in making this game, but I don't think he did. But so that is the arcade one. Right, now interestingly this is actually an official port. This is the C64 version of Juneau First. Now again, this was one of these games that I did play a lot in the C64. Looking at it now, it's not as impressive as it sort of seemed back in the day. I'm sure this is the one I played. I couldn't find any other version of Juneau First on the C64, so I'm sure this is the one I did play. It's still nice, but it's still nice. It just doesn't. I think the problem is I've actually become sort of quite spoiled with playing the arcade version. But this was the version I played back in 1983, whenever it was, and then like I said, when MAME came out I was surprised to discover that this was actually a port based on the arcade game. I mean, it's got the game mechanics, it's got the graphics. It's, I don't know, it just doesn't feel as smooth as I remember it to be. So it's probably one of these games, sort of rose-coloured spectacles slightly, I think. But it plays like the arcade one. Yeah, that's Juneau First, that's pretty good. Right, Karate Champ. Now, I was trying to play this game, and as you'll see here, I'm pretty hopeless at it. Now, the reason being is the arcade version of this actually had two joysticks. So you had to, it was kind of similar to like Battlezone, you had the two joysticks, and depending on what way you pushed, one joystick would determine what sort of punch or kick you're doing. So now it did have some basic sort of speech as well. You see there, I'm the only kick I'm able to do is back kick for some reason. But I think this was probably the very first, you know, martial arts video game. It certainly set the standard, you know, for what was to kind of follow. And for an early game, it's actually pretty good. The animation's not half bad. So this is the C64 one. Now I actually remember seeing this game. It was in the computer club I used to go to back in the mid-80s, and this guy had this on disc, and I remember this being, you know, I didn't even know this game existed. It hadn't been reviewed in Zap or anything, and this was, you know, it was an American release, and I remember being insanely jealous that he had this, and luckily he gave me a copy of it. And it's actually a really, really good version. The animation's pretty good as well, quite smooth. So yeah, I mean, people going about international karate and all that has been the, you know, the best martial arts game, which it possibly is. But you know, it was a game like this, and then obviously later on we had we have the Exploding Fists. But you know, if it wasn't for this game, you know, you probably wouldn't have international karate. But I remember getting this game on disc, and it was so exciting getting these games from America that, you know, it had never been released in the UK, and getting to play games on import was just quite an exciting prospect. So that is Karate Champ. That's a good conversion. Right, I was actually in two minds about whether to include this one. I thought, why not? It's 1984, so it's still kinda quite an early game. This is a Kung Fu Master. This is a difficult game. I think I've only once got to level 3 in the arcade. You've really got to have good timing. It's got a bit of digitised speech as well, which is quite nice. I was never a fan of the graphics in this game. I always thought he looked ridiculous with his big sort of puffy puffy trousers on, but I guess that's the way Kung Fu Masters actually dressed. Yeah, that's the arcade one. Now this is the C64 one. Now this was a game that I used to play quite a lot. And it's actually not a bad conversion. I remember not being overly impressed with the graphics in this game, but when you actually compare it with the arcade one, it's actually not half bad, and it does feel pretty much like it. It's certainly quite a bit easier. Well, I'm not too keen on the sort of the baddies. Have got rather odd looking heads with a sort of a pretty awful taste in fashion. A purple kind of trousers and suit. Yeah, this guy's always an absolute sod to kind of kill. You've got to stay out his way. Get off. Now basically when the baddies get a hold of you, you've got to actually waggle the joystick to kind of shake them off. Now if you press, in this version, if you press the space bar, it then changes between punching like that and kicking. You get more points for punching. And back to kick, and you get 100 points for a kick, and you get, I think you get 200 for a punch. Usually one hit from him and it's all over, like so. You've also got quite a strict time to kind of get to the end as well, so time limit, that's what I was trying to say. So, anyway, listen guys, that is the very last game. I hope you enjoyed watching it. As usual, please feel free to like, comment and subscribe, and thanks for watching.